Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great music theory day today at North Central. Today, we are going to be talking about dotted quarter notes. These are things that we've all seen before, and honestly, you probably know how these work intuitively, but we're just going to talk through it and make sure that we really understand how to count them and just to write in the counts when we're using dotted quarter notes. So you probably already know a quarter note is worth one beat in a 4/4 time signature, which is the most common one. Quarter note is typically worth one beat, and a dotted quarter note is worth 1.5 beats. All right, so a half note is worth 2 beats, quarter note is worth 1, dotted quarter note is worth 1.5. So, and that's the same rule we will find later. Anytime you add a dot to any kind of note, it adds half of its value. So a dotted quarter note is worth 1.5. A dotted half note is normally 2, so a dotted half note is worth 3. A dotted whole note would normally be worth 4, so a dotted whole note is worth 6, right? So it always takes half of that note and adds it on to the end. So let's look at how it works. So when we look at this example here, where we're dividing up into our 1 and 2 and 3 and, just like when we count with eighth notes, right? We can see that the dotted quarter note takes up 1 and 2. That's all the dotted quarter note. And then we have an eighth note on the and then a dotted quarter note takes up 3 and 4, and then another eighth note on the and, right? So the way that I like to think of this is that if I have a measure that is divided up into 4 beats, if we're in a 4/4 time signature, right? So I'm going to draw a line in half and a line in half. So there's my 4 beats. It's a little messy, but let's assume that those are all 4 equal beats, right? And then I can divide those even smaller into half beats, which those would be like eighth notes, right? And so when we're counting, we give each of those a thing, either a number or an and, right? So when we're counting, we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when we're doing something like this, we got to think about how much of it takes up. So if I have a dotted quarter note right at the beginning of a measure, it takes up the 1, the and the 2, 1.5 beats, right? It takes up this 1 full beat right here, and then it takes up the half beat also there. So that's all one note, takes up all that space. And then in that first measure, this one over here, if I'm writing it up there with my highlighting system, then I have an eighth note that just takes up the and. That's it. Then I have another dotted quarter that's going to take up 3 things again, right? 3 half beats. So I'm going to fill that up. So it takes up 3 and 4, and then another eighth note takes up the and, right? So that's how that measure is kind of set up. Then in the next measure, I have a dotted half note. So if I were thinking about that, dotted half note takes up 3 full beats. So again, if I make my kind of system, that dotted half note takes up all of this. And then I have a quarter note that just takes up the 1, right? So that's how this measure would look like right there. Now this next one is a little bit different, where I've got, let me just erase everything off the page here so we have some space. So then on the third measure here, if I were to do it again with my system, now it's a little bit different, where I only have an eighth note at the beginning, which means that it just takes up this little bit right here. That's it. The first half beat takes up an eighth note. And then I have a dotted quarter, which now starts on the and takes up and, 2, and is all one note right there. And then I do the same thing next, where I have just an eighth note, and then it takes up and, 4, and. Okay, so that's how that works. And then the last one, if I were going to draw that last measure on the top line with this system, and I put my little dotted things in there for the half beats, right? Now I've got 1, 2, 3 at the beginning, and then 2 whole beats at the end because it's a half note, right? So that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so if I were to play this or sing it, number 1, it would go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. I didn't say 3 and 4 and, I should have, but that's how that works. So the rest of this page is just about writing in the counts for examples that use dotted quarter notes. So that's all that we're doing this week is we're just going to be writing in counts. That's what your quiz will look like this week, is just writing in counts or choosing the correct counts more accurately, right? And knowing how many beats each of these things are worth. So on number 2, this whole example only has 3 beats in a measure. So there's no 4s. It's just 1 and 2 and 3 and that needs to be accounted for, right? So I'm going to do 1 and 2 and 3 and connected there. Then this next measure, I've got something on every 8th beat. So I'm going 1 and 2 and 3 and I come back and I do the parentheses. I think the thing that tricks people up sometimes is that when you're working with 8th notes, the number only counts as half of a beat. And sometimes you think like, oh, it's on beat 3. And so it takes up that whole beat. But in this case, the thing that's on beat 3 only takes up the half of the beat because the and of 3 is a separate thing. And that's what's important to keep in your head. So this is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Well, there's no 4, sorry. 1 and 2 and 3 and. That's it. Okay, good. Next measure goes 1 and 2 because we have a dotted quarter and 3 and. And then the last measure would be 1 and 2. And now here's tricky. And 3 and. All on that one note. Okay, so you can do these last 2 lines by yourself. This was a short video today, but I think that if you go back through, you can really understand how to do it. Just make sure that you've got all of the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or however many beats there are, 4 in number 3 and only 2 beats in number 4. So that's pretty easy. So if you fill that out and you practice and you have a handle on it, you will be in great shape for the multiple choice little knowledge check that will be coming up. And just keep checking that out. If you have questions, we are happy to answer them for you tomorrow. We hope you have a great Tuesday and enjoy doing this music theory. So thanks very much, and we will see you tomorrow.